Hello, everybody. Grant Hunter here with another Product Growth Leaders topic of the week. You know, this week we brought up a new topic. Steve, I wanted to do on a special topic of the week. Right, on a very special topic of the week, we're going to talk about mental health in product management. I'll be the first person to admit that I have anxiety and stress related professionally, but everything else, and I think all of us do, are people. And it's been with everything with COVID for the past couple of years and working from home and remote, I think it's become more to the forefront. So we wanted to have this conversation. Product management is a job that it can be ambiguous, and it can be, the clarity is not there in definition, and it leads to it being a stressful role. And so that's what we decided to talk about today. What a panel we got here. We've got international. We got Marco and Laurens coming in from Europe, Germany, and Barcelona. Hopefully I did that well. And we've got a lot of regular panelists, including my boy Jason's back. Jason, welcome. It's good to see you and have you in good health. We asked the question on Monday. There's been a lot of talk on social media about product management and mental health. How do you manage the stress of product management? Steve, is this even a topic that was talked about 5, 10, 15 years ago in product management?
Well, it wasn't talked about per se, except all of my jokes worked if they were about stress. I remember one of the jokes or stories that I told often was the story about Justin the policeman. I was having dinner with a VP of product management and her husband, and Liz and I were just kind of complaining about the frustration, difficulty in product management. And suddenly Justin said, how in the world do you guys handle the stress? And I'm like, wait, a policeman is telling me that he's finding this stressful compared to his job. And I said, how could that be? And Justin said, well, when I was a cop, we went to police academy. We had very clear roles and responsibilities. We had support from upper management. It doesn't sound like you have any of those. And so for many of the folks that go through my classes, it's like, okay, this is like a police academy. We're going to learn what is and is not your job. We're going to learn how to do things, and when to call for backup, and when to escalate to somebody else. And so I think it's been out there for 15, 20 years, and maybe longer, but I don't think we've really talked about it until recent times.
No, I agree. And just so people know, Steve Gutenberg does not show up in the class. It's not that police academy. It's there's only a few people who are going to get that joke. You have to be old enough to even know what the police academy movies are. So, but we asked the question, how do you manage stress? And we got more answers and longer answers. I think a couple of people will get to some of the theses that we got today. The first one I'm going to start with is our first thesis from Brian Weber. You talked about it's all knowledge workers, not just product management. And I thought that was a really good point, Brian. Everyone has their own results, but you can benefit from certain things. Talk to me about your approach and how you deal with it.
Yeah, I think everybody has their own things that they enjoy doing, be it exercise, different types of exercise. I think I put a walk in nature is always really good. And then, there's others that they'll meditate, they'll journal to get rid of the stress or just understand it. And then, good health. So I think those are just a common set of things that anybody can do to help with their stress.
The part of your answer that really intrigued me was stoicism. Talk to me about.
Yep, I started really getting into that probably a year and a half ago or so, reading a lot of the Ryan Holiday books. I started with the Daily Stoic, so every day it's one page, you read it. And just the philosophy of don't take it personally. It might be bad now, tomorrow it's going to be good. Don't get as emotional about things.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And maybe I need to take some time to look and to read from some of that. I always thought of stoicism as being unemotional, but really it's about managing what you let affect you and how you let things affect you. So it really interesting. It brought back memories from like a liberal arts college degree, talking in philosophy classes. But I thought it was a great answer. May, you talked about product management being an open-ended role, and lots of things feel like it's part of your job, more so in small organizations. Talk to me about your approach to how do you deal with it?
So personally, so product management is the job that could never end, right? Because your role is to make your product successful, and there's a multitude of things you can do, and there's not enough hours in a day, even if you don't sleep and are superhuman and can like warp time. So I think that it's important for us to think about, this is a job. We get paid to work a certain amount of hours for this organization. If you own equity or if you own the company, then maybe you're incentivized to put a bit more in it. But at the end of the day, it's work, right? So it's important for you to prioritize what's important. And on the stress front, I used to be a teacher, and I used to teach in a very impoverished neighborhood. So when I went into software, I saw people getting really stressed out, and I'm like, at the end of the day, for most of us doing our work, like if the software doesn't ship tomorrow, no one's gonna starve. So like, why are you freaking out over this? It literally doesn't matter. Like sales can deal with it. Yeah.
Perspective taking. You look at where we are, and maybe we put some more pressure on ourselves. I think that's a great lesson. And for anybody, to Brian's point, it's not just product management, it's knowledge workers as a whole. Sometimes we need to take perspective of where we are and what, and appreciate that.
Yeah.
Jason, you did not answer. It's been many, many Mondays since you've answered, but I'd love to get your take on this.
Yeah, personally, it's like what May was saying. I mean, it's about perspective. I was 19 running a team to operate nuclear propulsion on an aircraft carrier, and nothing I've done since is as important probably as making sure that 5,000 sailors didn't run aground or into another ship,
or the nuclear stuff didn't nuclear,
or it didn't go nuclear. So it's really for me, it's been about perspective, kind of keeping it at ease. So I have a mantra that when I've managed a team of product managers, and when they start stressing out close to release, we have to move it because it's low quality. And I just say, listen, no babies are dying as a result of us moving, and it's kind of what May was saying, like, this is just business. We're going to lose some, win some, and you're going to make people mad. And then the next day they're going to win something and they're going to be happy. So, but it can be stressful when you have your executives who have expectations of you, and you're not kind of living up to them. But that's just, again, that comes with the territory. But I don't know how to best manage that. I guess that's why we're on this call to figure that out.
I'm a member of a peer group, a Vistage peer group, and we had a session a few months ago where I talked about managing stress and my stress. And two things came into mind. One was a great advice is Byron Katie has the work by Byron Katie. There's 4 questions, and I think I've mentioned it before on this, but the first question is, is this thought true, right? And then is this thought really true, right? And too often we let a thought, whether it's what a executive or customer or developer expects from us, get the best of us, and we sort of go down that rabbit trail, and and it sort of goes into some of our biases. And that was one. And then another one recommended some meditation books by Sam Harris around waking up and that type of stuff. I think that perhaps what we do after we get this call is maybe put a post together where people can start sharing books or podcasts or apps that they use to help with this, because so far the Byron Katie stuff, the work helped. This Sam Harris stuff I'm just starting with. The Daily Stoic and Ryan Holiday is stuff that now I'm adding to the list. But I think if we can start cataloging some of these things, it would be a great way for us to do this. Marco, great to have you joining us from Germany, evening your time, not midday. But you talked about, so many responses to this report and in the cultural difference, some of it. I'd love to get you to talk about how you see this in, you know, in your culture versus the American culture in product management as a whole.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I've worked in the US and UK and all over the place. So a lot of that is, I think, the same across all cultures, particularly if you're dealing with international customers. So the expectations are there. One thing I always noticed is that very often disappointment stems from false expectations. And very often, particularly in product management, because it's ambiguous and it's more or less results driven, this does fuel these false expectations quite a bit. Very often, particularly when it comes to roadmaps or similar, or deadlines and milestones, a lot of these are set without a whole lot of evidence to support them. So obviously, it's very easy to miss those marks on a regular basis. And what ultimately comes out of that, apart, of course, from the disappointment, is a little bit too much of, I would say, negative reinforcement. You know, at the end of the day, we're all human. We do require some kind of level of satisfaction, or at least success or achievement. And if that is not met on a regular basis, but it's rather met with you know, the negative portion of that, the flip side of that, that's when you start stressing out. So again, I totally agree. It's a lot of, I would say, you know, the ability to be resilient towards that. And a lot of that, of course, doesn't really matter if it's cultural, time zones, if you're working 9 to 5, if you're working, you know, 10 to 10 or whatever, right? Or weekends or not. At the end of the day, what you're really trying to do is just come out of that week with a sense of achievement. Now, I've done something, I've achieved something, the work I've put in showed results, people were happy about it, or at least you've learned something from it. But where stress comes in, and again, this is across all cultures, is if that is missing. If you're not sure if you've achieved something, if your superiors don't get that feeling either, and at the end of the day, you really wonder, you know, why am I doing this? You know, what's the result? You know, I put something in and nothing positive comes out of it.
No, I get that. You talked about resilience. I saw a great session from a guy named Nick Petrie. He used to be with the Center for Creative Leadership on resilience. And, you know, one of the things he talked about was one of the problems we have is that we ruminate too much. You know, we let something just fester and we think about it and we ruminate on it. And, you know, one of his keys to building resilience was to how do you eliminate rumination that's not adding value to that conversation. So I love that term, resilience. I'm going to stay on the cultural tack and go to Laurens. You know, I'd love to understand, you know, sort of the same question as you see it in Spain versus what you see in the UK or America, or you know, do you see a similar pattern? Is it the same, you know, everywhere you go, you see it?
Yeah, good question. So from my side, I currently work for a company in Munich, in Germany. So it's a bit different. My previous company was based in Barcelona, but I'm planning to move into Munich. So I'm actually shifting of company culture or environment culture again. And I do experience that there is some differences in terms of culture, although both companies are very international customers, international employees, obviously all online. Yet you do experience some differences. I would say German company a bit more organized, a bit more structured. I've not worked for an American company before. I've worked for a New Zealand company. So it always changes. But yeah, I think some stereotypes are you can maybe generalize a little bit, like Spanish, maybe a little bit more relaxed. And yeah. Besides that, I would also say, I mean, I also agree with Marco on terms of sense of achievement you get. And I would say, I'd like to add to that, it could also depend on what kind of organization you're in, or the phase the organization is in. Is it a startup? Is it a scale up? is it, are you in a, do you need to turn around the whole situation? That could really highly affect as well the way you experience stress levels. For example, right now I'm in a scale up. My previous company also scale up, and everything's growing and everything is exciting. And I think maybe there's more chances to look back at your week and see the achievement or see the progress. But it doesn't mean that a product manager that's in a turnaround situation is not doing well or should feel less achieved. If he can keep the boat afloat, or if he can achieve a turnaround, that doesn't necessarily mean they are realizing huge numbers in revenue or whatever, but still they could do an amazing job. So it's also putting that in perspective and setting the expectation of what you can do in your current role. I think that's important as well.
Laurens, that's really, really insightful. I hadn't even thought about it. And Joey, I'm going to come to you in a second because of something he said. But one thing that stuck out to me, there's a professor at INSEAD in France named Erin Meyer. She actually just wrote a book with Reid Hoffman, but she has a book called The Culture Map, where you can actually take a assessment and it will talk about what countries are better fit for your culture, what you want to be with, and that type of stuff. So thinking about even as we're a global country, where companies are from and how that impacts the culture of the company. It's been something that I appreciate you bringing that in there. Joy, Laurens was talking about sort of where you are in the scale up and the startup and that type of stuff. And I remember when we were doing customer metrics or product metrics, you came up with the metric of team morale. And I think that just it comes full circle here, right? Where team morale is about the mental health. I'd love to get your thoughts on, for yourself, how morale and stress and also working with a team to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I've worked at some pretty toxic companies, and the current company that I work at right now is fantastic and amazing. And my go-to when I was younger, if it was a toxic company, I'd just quit and go somewhere else. That wouldn't really be an option at this point. So I'm very fortunate that I'm at the company that I'm at. But some things that I would recommend is reaching out to like-minded individuals in the same space. So Steve had an example where a police officer didn't understand the stress we're going through, but the VP of product management that he was talking to, they're able to commiserate. They get it. I mean, just like this community here, we get it. We've all experienced the same thing. We're not alone. And I think that's one thing that's been helpful for me. I was living in Chicago. I joined Chicago Product Management Association. So there's local product management associations. There's Slack channels that you can join. There's even just reading blogs and the comments, you realize that you're not alone, that the things that you're going through. And I think just that sense that there are other people who get it, who have gone through the same thing, and maybe you can read about or talk about how they've gotten through it. I think that's the most help. I mean, meditation, in general and whatnot is helpful, but I think in particular with product management, just talking or finding other product managers to talk to, even Lunch Club, I think can be helpful. You can reach out to product managers specifically.
That's one of the reasons Steve and I started both the Product Growth Leaders community, but also, these calls was to get us to a place where we can talk with other people, right? And maybe it's not always about the stress, but having that peer group is really, really important. Cory, you talked about has some great answers, and the fact that there's only so much you can control, both mentally and physically. We interact with so many people. I'd love to get your take on this.
Yeah, to amplify, I really like the perspective and the exercise ideas, because that's something I do too. But the Stoicism, and more specifically reading about philosophy, has really helped me over the last 5 years, because it's given me a lot of different perspectives than I didn't have. And the number one thing is there's only so much you can control. I can control my attitude, I can control my responses, I can control what I think, but I can't control what other people do. And as product people, we work with so many others, customers, team members, people in the company that will help or prevent us from doing something. we can't control them. We can try to influence them. We can try to engage them, but we cannot control their responses, their actions, their behaviors. We can only control ourselves. So working on that, getting better at that, helping me understand that has been great, reading philosophy and stoicism and those types of things. The other thing is to detach your job from who you are. I am very wrapped up in the fact that I love products. I love leading product organizations and working with product people and solving product problems. But the job that I have is different than that. That's what I love doing. However, if a company decides that they're over budget and they need to cut people, they will cut me. If I don't work in an organization that believes the same things I do, then I won't be successful. So I separate myself and what I like to do and the job that I have in the company I'm working at, because sometimes those things align. Very often they don't.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And a couple of things I wanted to, May, I know you need to leave. I wanted to see if you had any last thoughts from this conversation.
We actually did something with my team yesterday. We have this like session every other week on like, how do we learn to do work better, but like outside the context of work? And so one of us came up with the idea of like parodying what we do today. So I think just little fun activities like that does a huge thing for morale.
No, definitely. And it's and that's the thing, is it's not an individual thing. It should be a team thing as well, because we need to support each other and be there. Great comment. Cory, actually, one of the things you made me think of was the impact that 7 Habits of Highly Effective People had on me when I read it as a 21, 22-year-old, because there was the thing that you started reading, you know, don't stress over things you don't have control over. And I can still go back to that, but, you know, as a guiding point, but it still is something I think about. So I think that's one I would add to that list as well.
And it's not that you shouldn't worry about that, or you be concerned about that, I should say. It's like, I really want people to, I really want to do a good job. I really want to have a successful product. I really want to have the team members, you know, gel and work together and all that. Those are good goals, because good things to try to accomplish. You can't force that to happen, or you can't make that happen. You're striving toward it, but also realize that it's somewhat out of your control for all that.
No, completely and totally. Calvin, you talked about exercising and stretching being important in Sports Center. I don't know, as a Philadelphia sports fan, Sports Center maybe makes me more stressed than it does relax me.
Maybe you should try the Fox Sports and the West Coast version. That might, you know, just a thought. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, Cory mentioned, and I think a couple of other mentioned the exercise, and I mean, I just think of, you know, letting air out of the balloon, you know, conceptually is what's been beneficial for me. And like the stretching you can do in front of, you know, whatever your favorite program is, you know. But I also agree with, I think, what Joy said, and I think Cory may have mentioned this as well, or somebody mentioned it. Talking to others, talking to, you know, this group or other, you know, other peers that are not on today that have the same experiences and have that same kind of you know, understanding of what product management is and some of the you know, the challenges. And I do know the thing that Cory said that was you know, a reminder for me. I learned early on in my career that, you know, when there are challenges with the company, you know, suddenly you're a number, you know. And I saw that at age 24, 25, when, you know, small company and, you know, tough times and people got laid off. And so I learned early on that, you know, the job is the job, and I am not my job, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's challenging when people, you know, define themselves as what they do, because the stress becomes more of a more personal. And I've been able to kind of detach a little bit from that. So.
No, I think that's a great that detachment, you know. From Apple TV has a show coming out soon called Severance, where the premise is you go through the surgery and it separates your work memories from your non-work memories. It's more of a dark humor type thing, but it was an interesting concept, right? How do you, we always tell you need to leave work at work, right?
Yeah.
How do you separate yourself from it? And that's the hardest thing to do. When I used to commute to New York, people are like, how do you handle a, hour plus train ride? I'm like, dude, it is the best way to sort of reset yourself before. And it's somebody, I can't remember who it was, said they actually will do a 30-minute commute. They'll force themselves to drive around just to have that, that shut off time when dealing with it. So I love the idea of the separation, although it's hard.
This is the commute idea is interesting because I find like every day before I start, I kind of have a routine and I try and get on by 9, but I always spend 15 minutes, surfing the internet, whether it's looking at Twitter or reading the Washington Post or something online in order to kind of ease into my day.
Yeah, no, I get that. Paul Hurwitz, you have been sitting there very patiently, and I want to get to you and your thoughts on this.
So a few things. Number one, the whole idea of exercise for me, I mean, everybody hears me talking about bicycling. That's definitely my way of getting stress out. But I take it even one step further. I will try and do that at lunch, just to get out for 20, 30 minutes at lunch, just midday, get some endorphins going, get some stress out. And when I was in an office, a big thing, many companies they pay for lunch. Do you know why they do it? Because they want you to eat at your desk and not leave the office. So when I was at a company that was doing that, the last time I worked in the city, I actually scheduled twice a week for my team to take lunch and go sit out in a park outside the office to eat lunch, just for us to get out, de-stress, not be sitting at our desks, and just get some fresh air, which I think made a huge difference. In terms of also this whole perspective thing is definitely true. Everybody here has probably heard me say that I think that as a product manager, we have to be willing to step on toes a little bit. We have to be willing to push back on people. And I think you have to have a little bit of that, having a little bit of that fortitude to push back on people who you think are making bad decisions or non-data based decisions adds to our stress. People who make bad decisions is what leads to our stress. So I think if you can, and I try to internalize this myself, if I can make a good decision on a product decision and it's based on data and I have justifications for the decision that I made, I will feel less stress if somebody comes and says, let's do this, or why are you doing that? If I feel that I can justify what I'm doing, I try and de-stress myself that way by knowing that I made a decision in a proper way.
Yeah. No, I that's a great, I love the idea of scheduling the time to go out when you couldn't do that. We have to do these things to make it happen. We've had an incredible conversation. We're already, 30 minutes in or so. I was going to, before we move to the poll, want to see if anybody else has other comments. I think I've given everybody a chance on this question about how do we manage the stress. Steve, any last, go ahead, Marco.
Well, I mean, the health aspect, I would say, because I think most of us do forget about our own health for the most part. And that includes sleep, right? We lose sleep over this. We get up early, we feel tired in the afternoon, and we seem to be under the impression that we, again, to the point of resilience, we have to keep going. We're these energizer bunnies and we're supposed to be answering all the questions. And at the end of the day, everything needs to be finished. And we sacrifice, for example, sleep over that. And the problem with that is it's a vicious circle. Because when you don't have enough sleep, you're not focused, you don't have the energy, and that by itself then has a negative effect on your work as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of perpetuates itself, and unless you break out of that vicious cycle, which again also has a direct effect on how you handle stress, It's going to be almost impossible to break out and make a fresh start. So that's why sometimes you just need vacations to break out.
Yep. And I think for me, as I look at that, one of the issues I had was I would wake up at 3 a.m. and my mind would start going on work stuff. And the ability to shut that off has been one of the key things for me. Steve, any last thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, I'm actually just reminded of a cartoon that's been making the rounds since my father was a young manager. In those days, they were, bad photocopies of bad photocopies or mimeographs or something. But anyway, the cartoon was lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. And I know I have always needed to embrace that more. Somebody comes in at 4:45 on a Thursday and says, oh, I need this tomorrow morning. I go into full freak out. And you're like, you really have to step back and go, wait a minute, how long have you had this? Oh, 3 weeks and you're just telling me about it? Well, I'll see what I can do, but I'm not going to stress about it. And that's easier said than done. But I think a lot of our stress does come from lack of planning elsewhere or underskilling of people elsewhere, just because they can't apparently read the shit we already wrote and put on SharePoint doesn't mean it's my job to read it aloud to them.
From Jira.
Or SharePoint.
You always talk about reading aloud from Jira. I just had to finish that one right there. Cory in the chat, I love that thought. Treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping, right? And sometimes we forget that we need to take care of our own self. And so what a great conversation on this topic. Let's get to the poll. The poll question was, what's the leading product management related cause of your stress and anxiety? And we got a lot of answers. Firefighting never ends at 11%. Lack of clear definition, expectations of my role. Unrealistic expectations from leadership, both at 29%. Actually, if you're on the website, you'll see that's changed. Somebody else voted for realistic expectations. We got stakeholders, only one vote, 5%. And other, it depends with 23%. Steve, did you vote on this?
I did not. Or maybe I did. I mean, the weeks go by. I'm going to go with lack of definition and expectations for my role, which is, it seems to be every place we go, people are like, my job is ill-defined. And as you know, from our courses, the research says that only, 12% or 20% of organizations even have a clear definition of product management. So it strikes me that would be a major source of stress.
And it actually goes to your answer from the first question about your product management coach friend who said one of the biggest problems they see is people not knowing the role, right? It's the tactical role versus the strategic role. I voted for the unrealistic expectations from leadership, and I was very literal with this. It's unrealistic expectations for myself, right? As we are building our company, as we are the product management people, I put expectations out there that are unrealistic of myself and of what I want us to do. And I think that's where a cause of it. Joy, how did you vote? You're on mute.
Well, I did not anyhow, so mute.
What would you vote?
What was the one about the description or
lack of clear definition and expectations of the role?
Yes.
Oh, wrong. Yes. I hit the wrong button.
Oh,
believe is good too, right? Jason, how about you?
I voted on the unrealistic expectations from leadership.
Okay.
Which, it's obvious it's tied to the expectations of the role, but I think you have leadership who don't understand software, technology, the product process, thought workers, and they have expectations to deliver it to their group, their customers and stakeholders. Then there could be obviously a lack of communication and a lack of understanding, which can cause stress not only to you, but also to the leadership.
Yep. I love it. Brian.
The lack of clear definition.
Lack of clear. Did you vote? Or is that what you're going to vote for now?
That's what I voted.
Okay.
I did.
Because me, I'm trying to do the math on is mine going to win or not. And unfortunately, with Joyce joining Steve, that one's sort of running away from me. But okay, lack of that. How about Laurens? Did you vote?
I did not vote, but I would also tend to agree with lack of clear definition. Could be the definition can be very broad, right? It could be more towards discovery, more delivery, more technical, less technical. There could be so many things, and I think that's where expectations need to be managed.
I actually agree with you, and Steve and I have talked about and written about that. Maybe I will change my vote. Marco.
Yeah, I also voted for lack of clear definition. And the interesting thing about this is generally as a product manager, you try to find a solution to a problem. And very often people try to find a problem to a solution. And as a product manager, you're very often that solution that people try to apply to a problem that they haven't really defined. So I do see very often, and this happened to me more often than not, that I'm considered to be the person, just fix it, right? Or project manage this, or program manage this, or something else, when the product management side of things, so the solution that I can provide, is not really what they were looking for in the first place. So they have a completely different problem. They didn't really identify it. And they thought, okay, product manager, ambiguous, kind of fixes it all.
So we're the fix-it role.
Exactly.
And that puts a lot of, yeah. Paul.
So I was the late vote, actually, just before the meeting. Unrealistic expectations from leadership.
I didn't even know that. I'm now I know who's on my team.
And I think, as I can't remember who was saying it before, that really encompasses a lot of different things. Unrealistic expectations from leadership of what product management is, unrealistic expectations from leadership on what the market wants, unrealistic expectations from leadership on
what you can deliver.
What you can deliver, exactly. All sorts of different kinds of unrealistic leadership.
All right. And Cory, you came in, I mean, Cory, you gave me a stack rank order, and I can't do stack ranks on, the platform here. If I could, there's definitely times that everybody says all the above, but it's nice to have that stack rank. And you went with the same unrealistic expectation from leaderships.
Yeah, because I like all the answers. I think they're all valid. I think they all stem from a unrealistic expectation from leadership and how leadership views the job, how they're viewing problems. And if that's not fixed, then you will have the other firefighting and definitions and stakeholders doing their own thing.
And the interesting thing is that was the exact conclusion we came to in our bad product management is, the leading issue with stress, the leading issue with bad product management, the leading issue with a lot of these things is leadership's expectations are not aligned. Calvin, I saved you for last. Had you voted? I thought you were the extra vote that came in. I was going to have you and Cory last because I figured that last vote was, you're the only one who votes after I've taken the screen grab.
And I made a point last night to vote, so that I wouldn't cause you that challenge, that angst. I said other because I felt like prioritization was the challenge, and I didn't feel like prioritization fit within the lack of clear definition, and it didn't fit in with unrealistic expectation, or with an unrealistic expectation. That I felt like the change in priorities, the change in corporate direction is what causes this stress, because you don't really know where to allocate your time, or I don't know where to allocate my time.
If I really wanted to, I could spin that as, well, you just said it's leadership's fault, so it would be a vote for leadership, and I think it would be a tie. I'm not going to go down that path. It seems like, the combo of unrealistic expectations and lack of clear definition, which there's definitely interrelationship to. I think there's a clear, those sort of was a leading cause. So I thank you for the conversation and the votes. I'm going to skip one of the questions and go to this question. We talked about the impact and what we individually can do, but as product leaders, what should we be doing to help reduce the levels of stress and anxiety in our product managers? So now let's put the hat on as somebody who could help other people. what should we be doing? How can we help? How can we as leaders help our team with this? And Jason, I'll come to you first. We've talked about a lot of little things, and I do believe that I'm going to take this, reread it, take our notes down, and actually maybe create a blog post or a white paper about it, because this is such a vital topic. But this is now shifting to, as people helping other people, what can we do? Jason.
Don't panic.
Don't panic.
Don't panic. You need to show that you're people, that you support them, that you're there for them, and that their decisions matter. And also, when there is something that's real critical, that you don't show panic and create more panic in a situation where they're already stressed. Like, you have to acknowledge that the people that work with you want to please not only you, but their stakeholders. They're already stressed. So if you start adding on that by panicking, that's not going to create any great solutions. And you can also provide as a role model that everything can take, some time, some chill, work through the solutions, and figure out how to communicate. And I think that's how I've worked with my product managers in the past, and they've appreciated that kind of resilience. Just
the calm, steady hand that can sort of,
Mm-hmm.
if they see you stressing, it'll compound with them. I love that. That's a great. Cory.
Talk to them, get them in dialogue, get them in conversations, talk to them about what bothers them, talk to them about what struggles they're having, talk about what they don't want to talk about what they do want to talk about. Just hold space for them to talk. And if they're not talking, encourage them to journal. I meant to mention it in my first answer, but journaling is the thing that has really changed one of my mindsets, is learning how to journal, and then journaling, because it's a conversation with myself. And sometimes that's fun, sometimes it's not, but it's very therapeutic.
I love that idea. I love that. Calvin.
I mean, not only talk, but listen as well.
I think that was implied in what Cory said, but I appreciate the calling it out specifically. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it for now.
That's it for now. Paul, what makes me think of is your lunches you used to schedule. Was it just to get out, or did you talk and listen with them?
It definitely that, talk and listen. But really, as my answer to this, I'm really gonna jump a little bit on what Jason was saying, of being level-headed, but taking that one step further. And we talked about before of keeping the right perspective on things. Don't make people think that we're saving lives every minute of the day with what we're doing. Keep things in perspective. If the work doesn't get done by 5:30, just continue it the next day. Like, we're not supporting whatchamacallit, we're not supporting aircraft carriers or submarines or whatever you served on, Jason. I'm not sure. But like, we're not, most of the time, we're not doing things that is life or death at every moment. So it's okay to slow down and keep perspective on what we're doing.
Two things that sort of jumped to me when I had one of my favorite managers ever. It was when I was a director at an enterprise software company of competitive intelligence. He said, if you were working less than 35 or 40 hours a week, you probably don't have enough on your plate. If you're working more than 45 or 50 hours a week, either we need to work on your efficiency or you've got too much on your plate. And he's like, when you're home, I want you to, when you're off, I want you to be off. And when you're on, I want back to the severance, right? How do you separate it? The second thing is, along with that, keep perspective and keep the calm. I always found that part of my job as a leader was to be air cover, right? Don't let a lot of the BS from leadership and other stakeholders get to them. I was the protector. I was the person who was shielding them from some of this stuff that was an issue. But when you talked about perspective, it made me think about that. Brian Weber.
I agree with the perspective and staying calm, but then I would also add, encourage them to take time for themselves. It's so many people are looking at product managers to get stuff done for them that they think they have to work 12, 14-hour days. Right? It was just said, it'll be there tomorrow. So take that time for yourself, go for a walk, enjoy your family, whatever it is.
Tell them to schedule that time for themselves.
Yes.
And I'm almost insistent, right? Make
Yep.
them do it. I love that because sometimes they won't and you have to force them to. Joy.
I would say tell them that it's okay to talk about it. We just in general, we've come so far with mental health and being able to talk openly about it. The current company that I'm at, the CEO and founder, during a company town hall that was being recorded for the entire company, admitted, because he's the co-founder, how stressful it was, how lonely, and how he went through this really long depression period. And I was like, I cannot believe he just admitted that on a recording to all his employees. And I just think it's an amazing thing, because now we can say, even our CEO admitted to going through depression. So if you're stressed, if you're upset, open up, tell us about it.
I was at a meeting at a global 100 company, and it was in HR, total rewards and benefits and stuff. And the CEO came and talked. This, guy who's on CNBC and Wall Street Journal, all this stuff all the time. And he shared a video on mental health they had done for the organization where he admitted the same. And it's like to see the CEO of a global 100 company admitting the issues he's had and how he went and got counseling. The impact that had on that organization, the impact that had on me as somebody just, observing it was incredible. But wow, that's powerful to have the co-founder CEO do that. And that's part of making it a safe space, right? For people to do that. Oh, wow, that's powerful. Jason, great point. Be openly thankful for your teammates and employees. Sometimes we don't get enough appreciation, and part of our job is to do that, to give that appreciation. How about you, Marco?
Can I just make one small comment, just jumping on what you were just saying, that safe space, making sure that your team understands that it's safe and okay to ask for help.
Yeah, I completely agree. Marco.
As product managers, we're pretty good at listening to our customers and their problems and finding solutions, but it seems very difficult for leaders to do the same for their team members. And to Paul's point, the safe space is so incredibly important. If you don't trust your superior, or your superior doesn't trust you, there is no open space, no safe space to talk about this and find a solution. So, and also to Calvin's point, listen. Don't impose your solution to that problem on your team members. Have them find the solution themselves. So just listen and just try to use active listening. Ask questions and have them propose what they could do in order to alleviate that issue.
I love that. Laurens.
Yeah, I would say do some activities that are not work related at all, like build relationship. For example, what we did is I worked for a chess company, so we would play some chess games, or we would walk in nature. A group of us also, we would go in the morning, go to the ocean and swim in ice cold water in winter times. These kind of things, it kind of forms a relationship. I wouldn't make that mandatory because, of course, many people would also value their own private time and it's completely optional. But for those people that do want to engage in that, I think that's a great way to build a relationship.
No, I think that's great. Steve.
Well, I think I'll go with the police slogan of protect and serve. I think in one aspect, our role as product leaders is to protect our team from the idiocy elsewhere, and knowing that it is safe to come to me and say, the sales rep is asking me this, or the head of development is asking me that, and it's unreasonable. I remember a case where a sales rep wanted to book one of my product managers to do some sales engineering work, which is not his job to begin with. And he said, okay, and the date is February 10th. And I need a commitment from you. And Bruce said, well, that's the day my daughter is going to be born. So I'm pretty sure I can give you my answer now. I won't be there. And sure enough, Kevin went to his boss came to me and he said, I need you to make a commitment here. And I said, we've already made the commitment. I am committed that we are not going.
Yeah.
And under what circumstance is it a reasonable request? Not even his job, right? So I think there's an aspect of protecting your team, but there's also an aspect of serving your team. If you see that one of your team members doesn't know how to do a thing, you know, be the coach or provide the training or, you know, help them become competent in their role. And I think that's the servant role, if that's the right term, of being a product leader or a manager.
Servant
so protect and
leadership.
serve.
Yeah, I love servant leader, and you know, a couple things that popped in my head there, right? Make sure people take time for their anniversaries, their birthdays, their kids' concerts and events. I mean, Steve, you know how important it is for me to be able to see Megan and Kettner do, you know, their shows and jazz competitions and marching band. That's so important. And there are times in my career where I missed that, right? Where I was prioritizing, and you have to do that. But as a leader, let's make sure they do that as well. But your servant leadership also, when I was a VP at GE, I actually said to my direct reports, hey, my first and foremost goal is to make sure you're happy and you're achieving what you want in your career. And if that means that you want to take a step out of my team or somewhere else to chase a new opportunity, I want to be one of your references, right? I want to make sure that you know, if you want to be here, you're all in. If you don't, we help get you to where you're going to be happy. And I think as leaders, we need to think more about that as well, not just ourselves. And I guess that's, so the servant leadership concept, you know, really resonated with me. What a great conversation. We're down to our lightning round, and we won't have a ton, so we're going to make it fairly lightning. What would you warn someone new to product about the mental health impacts of being a product manager, right? We've talked about a lot of the issues that can go on. Somebody's saying, hey, and there's a lot of people out there who are saying, I want to be a product manager. What's your warning on the mental health aspects? And I'm going to start with Paul.
Keeping perspective.
Keep perspective. All right. Calvin.
Gosh, I don't, you know what? I'm going to pass. I don't know.
Okay. Would you want me to come back to you, or are you just going to pass fully?
You know what? I'm going to pass fully.
Okay, pass fully. Brian Weber. Wait, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. There's so much you need to know about. You don't even know how to communicate to a person what it should be, because it is such a major thing that it's hard to just say, what one thing would you say? Is that a good paraphrase for you, Calvin?
One thing that I would say, rely on others in areas where you lack the knowledge.
Rely on others where you lack the knowledge. I love that. Brian.
I'll kind of build off of Paul's to keep perspective. It's just, it'll change tomorrow. If it's bad today, it'll be better tomorrow.
I love that. Marco.
I would say keep a healthy work-life balance. I mean, if your work affects your personal life, it's already too late.
Healthy work-life balance, very important. Laurens.
I would agree. I would say put your health first. If you are more healthy, you can be more effective, more productive in all other ways.
I love it. Now I'm feeling guilty. I need to do more of that stuff. Cory.
I'm struggling with this, but the thing that's in the front of my head now that I want to say is be comfortable being uncomfortable. Learn how to deal with ambiguity, learn how to be okay with not knowing, learn how to say, I don't know, and be happy with that.
All right. Joy.
I'm going to stick with the theme from earlier, and I would just say you are not alone.
You are not alone. We've all been through this. We're all going through this. We're all in this together. I love it. Jason, unless you're going to break into High School Musical, we're all in this too. You know, Jason.
Zoom riots, flash Zoom riots. Yeah, so I was just gonna go on to a little bit more of what Calvin was saying, which was really just talk to each other, to each other and communicate with your team.
I love it. Steve.
Learn the serenity prayer, right? Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
I love that. I'm gonna just say, make sure you know how to take a step back, right? When you're in the heat of the moment, take the step back and breathe, right? Whether it's a walk in the nature, a plunge in the cold ocean in the winter, Laurens, or whatever it is that rejuvenates you. For me, it's often music that does that, but mentally make sure you take that step back. Don't let yourself get into the heat of it. Guys, this has been an amazing, powerful conversation for me. I think everybody has their own issues they deal with. It's so powerful, especially in the past couple of years with the pandemic and the fact that a lot of us have been living on these Zoom calls, right? And not having the face-to-face interaction that we could have. Having a conversation about what we can do both individually for ourselves, but as leaders, identifying where the things are and then talking about what our advice would be for others. What a powerful, impactful time. Paul, Calvin, Brian, Marco, Laurens, Cory, Joy, Jason, May, who I had to leave earlier, and my partner, Steve Johnson. Thank you for a wonderful conversation. And know, each and every one of you, I'm here to talk to if you want somebody to talk to, if you're going through something. Many of you know that, but the thing is there, and we are all in this together, and I'm not going to go into the song, but that one of the main reasons we created this community, Steve and I wanted to have a place to talk to and engage with other people for this exact same reason. So I don't know why it took us so long to do this one. It seems like it's right at home with what we've been doing. So thank you guys so much. We do this every week. Mondays, the question goes in. Wednesdays, we have the poll. And on Fridays, we have these wonderfully powerful calls that help me think and grow. And thank you guys so much. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you next week in the community.